All these centrist idiots crying into their oat lattes about the way going of Nicola Sturgeon, for so many long years the First Minister of Scotland, and for many years before that the Second Minister in Scotland. It seems that she has been with us forever, as we have sunk ever deeper in the social, political and economic malaise that is today's Scotland. Sure, she knew her pronouns, although her new pronouns are was and were. She knew the buttons to push for the liberality in the South and in Europe, but in fact, she presided over an almost tyrannical administration in Scotland. And you can see that in the betting for her successor. Nobody else is over 3% because she was all-powerful. She and her rather shadowy husband, one Peter Murrell, who was the General Secretary, is the General Secretary of the ruling party. A husband and wife team not seen since Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu, though in this case the pants were on the, although you never know, you can't know what's in people's bedrooms. But the shadowy Peter Murrell is currently under police investigation over murky goings-on in the SNP's accounts, where £800,000 were lent to the party by Peter Murrell. A singular decision. Nicola, his wife, knew nothing about it, only from his resources, though where he got those resources will be quite a tall tale to summon. That may have been the reason for her resignation, or it may have been evidence about to emerge in the emails that were inadvertently dropped into a Russian letterbox by the madly anti-Russian NATO fanatic SNP defense spokesman. I've not yet seen the details of what he was doing, putting things through that letterbox, but that is what has happened. Now those emails are stolen property, just like the MP's expenses were stolen property when the Daily Telegraph published them. But sometimes it's in the public interest to publish what you find on stolen property. And Craig Murray, the Honourable Craig Murray, who else? The former ambassador to Uzbekistan is now in full possession of these emails. He's a bosom buddy, perhaps I shouldn't put it that way, of Alex Salmond. And he is ready to publish at least those he and his legal team consider to be in the public interest to publish. Perhaps there's something in those emails that was the proximate reason for Nicola Sturgeon's entirely unexpected, uncharted, and surprise resignation this morning in a 55-minute resignation speech, longer than the resignations of almost any elected officer ever on earth. Nicola Sturgeon got one thing after another wrong. It's not just that Alex Salmond was fitted up by supporters of Nicola Sturgeon, was sent into prison for what might have been the rest of his life, but for the wisdom of a majority women jury at the High Court in Edinburgh, the kind of jury trial that Nicola Sturgeon's government then tried to abolish. Luckily, or you'd never have seen or heard of Alex Salmond again, and she might still be in power. It wasn't just these three things. The two ferries that the SNP commissioned have now cost more than the Scottish Parliament building itself. Yet neither is remotely seaworthy. And the shipping scandal is not the worst of it. There's the aluminium smelter scandal that may cost the Scottish people literally billions of pounds over the next 30 years because of the, well, let's be charitable, utterly, shamefully, shamelessly incompetent deal that Nicola Sturgeon drove with a dodgy Indian businessman up there in Invergordon. He's not in Invergordon, of course, but the smelter is. The jobs were supposed to be, but no jobs materialized, and no aluminium either. But it wasn't just those things either. It was not just the so-called hate crimes bill, which, I kid you not, dear viewer, could have seen everybody at my Christmas dinner table prosecuted for hate speech in a private house, in my case, in my own private house. Because amongst many other items of conversation were the issues which may very well have been the final straw for Nicola Sturgeon's government. I refer, of course, to her ludicrous Gender Recognition Act, which inexplicably was not just rammed through, forced through by a nationalist government. One would have thought intent, by definition, on maximizing the number of people in the nation that would unite behind its one single raison d'etre, the independence of Scotland, was not just rammed through by a nationalist government, but was given wings and pushed through almost unanimously by the so-called Labour Party in Scotland, led by a Muslim, and by the so-called Scottish Liberal Party. Even a couple of Conservative members of the Scottish Parliament voted for it. In that Gender Recognition Act, I probably don't need to tell you, men can become women, not by the wave of a wand, but the wag of their tongue. Just by saying that they are now a woman, they become a woman. It was cheered to the rafters by all these so-called progressives, but it has run into the wall of the Scottish people's common sense. The first wall was gender-specific toilets. There's a lot of women, my own wife, my own daughters included, who prefer, thanks very much, to go to a ladies' toilet and don't want to see a man identifying as a woman waving his hopefully flaccid dick around in front of them in the lavatory. And then it was the changing rooms of the swimming pools, where ditto, many women like to swim alone. They certainly like to shower alone. They certainly like to get changed alone, rather than the aforementioned self-declaring women with dicks. The next barrier into which it ran was in shop changing rooms. But the last of the barriers may turn out to have been the most significant. That barrier, and if you think about it, was not just predictable, was not just predicted, but was literally ineluctable, could not possibly be avoided. A double rapist who was a man when he raped two women, transitioned, he said, while on remand, and emerged in a blonde wig for his sentencing as a woman, and therefore, under Nicola Sturgeon's law, had to be sent to a women's prison, where presumably the wig would have fallen off, the dick would have been out, and the fellow prisoners and warders would be in danger of being raped, just like the other two women that this miserable creature was convicted of raping. At first, Nicola Sturgeon stuck to her guns. If she is a woman, then she must be held on the female prison estate. So horrendous was the outcry amongst the Scottish public, the workforce in the jails, the relatives of convicts in the women's jails, that she had to U-turn, accept. She continued to call him she. She continued to insist that he, the rapist, the double rapist, was a woman and was merely temporarily going to be housed on the male prison estate. You see where all this is going? It's going up the fundament of all the progressives and liberals who've championed this madness right from the beginning. And the parties, plural, the SNP, the Green Party, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrat Party, who championed it with Nicola Sturgeon, should all be tendering their resignations right now along with hers. I wish I could go into the hatefulness of the supposedly civic nationalism of the SNP, founded by fascist sympathizers in the 1930s, interned for collaborating with Hitler when the Second World War began, later to emerge as the president of the SNP. And every year until now, an award in his honor, the Arthur Donaldson Prize, is given to high Hedians in the Scottish nationalist movement. I wish I could debunk and shake you out of this fatuous, foolish affiliation with Scottish nationalism. Scottish nationalism is no different to any of the other nasty nationalisms in developed imperialist countries. But Nicola Sturgeon and her way going, presumably into the international commentariat or administration in the EU or any of these other NGO hangouts that earn you hundreds of thousands a year, will not be the end of Scottish nationalism, and therefore I will not be able to cease to think and talk about it. But let me turn to the other big issues that are affecting, bigger issues that are affecting all of us today, something nationalists never do. They never think about the war. They never think about what's going on in America. They don't even think about what's going on in Manchester. They're only interested in their own midden heed. But we are, because we are the alumni of the Open University of the Airwaves, and will not avert our eyes from the virtually unreported environmental catastrophe that has taken place in, oh the irony, East Palestine in the state of Ohio, where the train drivers bludgeoned back into work on pain of imprisonment by blue-collar Joe Biden, the so-called Democratic president, had the predictable and predicted end in a train crash in East Palestine, which has poisoned the river Ohio, which a third of the people of the United States depend on for their clean water, which has killed all the animals within miles around, and which is hanging like a cloud of toxic gas over the great state of Ohio. Where's Greta Thunberg when you need her? Where's the eco-warriors when you need them? Where's the Friends of the Earth and the Extinction Rebellion? Silent, zipped up, just like over the Nord Stream 2 pipeline terrorism, indisputably established now by Seymour Hersh, who proves in minute, mountainous detail that the United States ordered the hit, planted the explosives, and then got the Norwegians, who stood to gain a very great deal through their own pipeline traffic, to do the deed of blowing it up on Joe Biden's personal orders. A big story, you'd think, in Britain, in Europe, okay, in Germany. whose pipeline it was, which was bombed by two of its closest friends and allies. Its NATO partners blew up $20 billion worth of its infrastructure, vitally necessary for the German and European economies. But no, zip, European Parliament, zip, European Administration, Commission, zip, German Parliament, except for one brave socialist woman from Die Linke, zip, German government, zip, television, radio, newspapers, zip, even in Germany. And they still try to tell you that you're living in a free country. Look up there at those balloons. They might be UFOs. They might have come from Mars. Hold an emergency press conference about a weather balloon that at the third time of asking, we managed to bring down with $1.2 million worth of Sidewinder missiles. Don't look down the track. Don't look under the sea. Don't look over there at the war. Look up at the balloons. If you agree to do so, the balloon is you, not Joe Biden. But you're here because you ain't no balloon. This is the mother of all talk shows.